Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Favor, and in today's tutorial we are going to be learning how to make this cute Halloween crop top. So let's get right into this tutorial. So these are the materials we'll be needing for this tutorial. We'll be needing some stitch markers. I'll be using a size 5mm hook, okay? A size 5mm hook, and you'll be needing a yarn needle, a pair of scissors, your measuring tape, and then we'll be needing our yarn, of course. These are the two colors of yarn I'll be using for this tutorial. This is a fingering lightweight yarn, and I'll be using 2 strands of each. I will also be using this skull applique for this tutorial. Okay, so if you want to know how to make these, the link for the tutorial is in the description. You can go ahead and watch that. So that will be all for the materials we'll be needing. So let's dive right into the tutorial. So for this tutorial we'll be using our bust measurements. Okay, so you want to go ahead, we'll be starting with the bust measurements. So you want to go ahead and measure around your bust, which is the fullest part of your breast. Okay, and then for me I'm a size 35 for my bust measurement. So you want to note that measurement. So mine is 35, so you write out 35 and you minus 4 inches from it. So 35 minus 4, it is going to give you a total of 31 inches. All right, so this is the measurement I'm going to be using for my starting chain. Okay, so we're going to start our project now. So we'll make our chain a chain of 31 without stretching the chain. All right, so depending on whatever your size is, you want to measure around your bust. Okay, for me I measured, I got 35. You minus 4 inches from it, and the remaining you have is the length of chain we are going to make. Okay, so for instance, if you're size 40 around your bust, you minus 4, you should have 36. So you're going to make a chain of 36 for your bust measurement. So that is just it. So let's go ahead and start making our chain. So we are going to begin by making a slip knot. Okay, so you want to take your hook and place your yarn on it, and then you twist around once, and then yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. Okay, and then pull on the tail to tighten it, and then you can also pull on this side to adjust the length of the yarn on your hook. So once you have this, now you want to chain one, pull. Okay, so this is chain one, just yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that is how to make your chain. So I'm just going to keep making chains like this until I have it enough for the measurements I need for the bust area, which is for me is 31. So depending on what your measurement is, that is what you're going to do. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and like I said, we are not using a stretched measurement. So you want to lay your tape flat. Okay, you lay your tape flat like so, and then you're going to place your chain along the tip, and then you measure without stretching. Okay, so mine is around 6 inches right now, so I want to keep making these until I have a total of about 31 inches, and then I'm going to meet you when we are done. So at this point now I have my chain long enough. So to get a more accurate measurement, you want to stretch out your chain like so. Okay, so you stretch it just like this, and when you're done stretching, you want to lay out the chain flat on your working surface, and then you're going to place your tape along the length of the chain. Okay, so like I said, you just place the tape flat, and then you place your chain flat as well, and then you just measure along, and then you should have the total number of chains that you need for your work. So you can see it is not being stretched at any point. So let me show you what the work looks like. So you can see I just laid my tape flat like so, and then I took the measurements also of the chain laying flat. I'm not holding it at any point, they are just both by themselves on the table. Okay, so you can see all the way down to the 31 inch mark. You can see where it stopped. So this is the length of my chain, as you can see. Okay, so you want to go ahead, you place your chain flat, and then you measure, you stretch it out, and then you place your tape flat also against the chain and measure. So that is how you should do the measurement. You're not stretching the chain while measuring. You stretch it first, you place it flat, and then you measure. So once you've achieved the length of chain that you need for the bust measurement, you're going to start making our row 1, and to do that you're going to skip the first chain, okay, which is this very first chain, and then into the second chain from your hook you want to make a single crochet into that chain. Okay, so this is how you make your first single crochet, and then by this side loop of this single crochet that we just made, you insert your hook there and make another single crochet. So this is 2 single crochets stacked on each other. After you have that, you yarn over. So these first 2 single crochets stacked on each other is going to be our stitch for the beginning of every row, and this gives us the height we need for a half double crochet. So this is representing a half double crochet. So yarn over into the next chain space, you make a half double crochet stitch there. Yarn over into the next chain space, you make a half double crochet stitch there. Yarn over into the next chain space, you make a half double crochet stitch there. You're just going to keep making half double crochets on all of the stitches all the way down. Okay, all the way down until you get to the end of your chain. So I'll meet you when we are at the very last chain there, and I'll show you how to connect the 2 rows together. So at this point now I've made my chain, and I've worked a half double crochet on all of the stitches. I'm towards the last chain, so this is what I have so far. Okay, so I have 2 chains left, so I'm making 1 half double crochet. So when you have only 1 chain on your hook, there is only 1 chain remaining for that first row, you want to fold this. Okay, you want to fold it into 2 like so, but while folding you want to make sure that it is not twisted at any point. So this part should be on top of this part, so you should have a folded work like so. Okay, so you want to fold it in half so that you're able to get the very first stitch on this side. So now what do you have to do? We are going to be connecting our rows at this very last stitch. So you want to fold it like that. Make sure it is not twisted. You know where you're supposed to place your stitch from. So yarn over into that very last chain space, you insert your hook there. Okay, you're not going to finish the stitch, and then at the base of this first stitch that we made here, okay, you also want to insert your hook into the base of that stitch as well. Okay, so this is the first half double crochet here. This is the base of the stitch. This is where I'm going to insert my hook through, and then that is where you want to now pull through and complete your last half double crochet. So you can see we have connected the 2 rows together, and then you want to slip stitch to join to the top of this very first stitch here. So you pick the top of that stitch, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So you can see we have connected it, and you want to make sure that your work is well aligned and it is not twisted at any point. Okay, so this is what you should have. The 2 rows are now connected. So once you have this, now you want to chain 1 and then turn your work. So you pull your stitches apart, and this is the very first stitch we have here. Okay, and this is the top of that very first stitch. Okay, no, so this is the very first stitch here. So this is the top of that stitch. That is where you want to insert your hook and make your first single crochet, and then by the side of that single crochet you insert your hook and make another single crochet. Like I said, this is going to be our starting stitch for every row, 2 single crochets stacked on each other. After you've done that, you yarn over into the next stitch, you place a half double crochet, yarn over into the next stitch, you place a half double crochet, yarn over into the next stitch, half double crochet, and you're just going to keep placing half double crochet on all of the stitches all the way until you're right back to this point where we started. So now when you're towards the end of your row, okay, you also want to make sure that you're placing your stitch on the correct stitches. All right, so make sure you're not putting more stitch than needed. So this is the very last stitch for me, so you can always pull it apart and see your last stitch, and then place your last half double crochet on the top of that very last stitch there. So once you've done that, now you slip stitch to the top of the first stitch, okay, to join the round. So that is it for round 2. So you chain 1, turn your work, and repeat the same process again for row 3. What do you have to do? You pull your stitches apart. This is my very first stitch here. This is the top of the stitch. You make the starting half double crochet stitch, which is 2 single crochet stacked on each other. After your starting stitch, you yarn over into the next stitch, you make a half double crochet, yarn over into the next stitch, you make a half double crochet, and you just keep repeating that pattern all the way until you get to the end of the row, and then you finish off that row just like we did for the second row. When you get to this point, you pick on your very last stitch, and then you slip stitch to join, and you're going to keep repeating those 2 rows, row after row. So at this point, this is what I have. So we are going to keep doing this row after row until you have a total of about 6 inches when you place your work flat and then you measure the length of your work. So at this point now, I have it about 1 inch in length. So I'm going to keep doing this until I can measure about 6 inches like this. So go ahead and keep doing that row after row until we have about 6 inches. So like I said, I'm going to make a total of 6 inches. Okay, so I've made a number of rows, and when you measure from the top to the bottom, as you can see, it's about 6 inches. Okay, so this is the length we want to have, and then we are going to make a decrease for the waist measurements. Okay, so you want to use your tape and you measure around your waist, the thinnest part of your waist, which is usually about 1 inch or 2 above your navel. Okay, so I measured mine and I got 28 inches. Okay, so that's 28 inches. Now remember what we did for the bust measurement. We subtracted 4 from our bust measurement to get this. So you want to do 28 minus 4. It's going to give you 24. Okay, so this is the amount we want to reduce this to for our waist measurements. So you want to go ahead and measure your waist. If yours is 30, you do 30 minus 4 and you get 26, and that is the amount you want to use for your decrease. So after you've gotten that, now the next thing you want to do is to measure across your work. So you place your tape across your work like so. Okay, as you can see, mine is around 15 and a half. Okay, 15 and a half. So you go ahead and do your own measurement and note the current measurement of your work. So I have 15 and a half, and remember this is the half measurement. This is in 2 places, so 15 and a half plus 15 and a half for me is 31. So if you measure across your work and you have something like 17 plus 17 will give you 34. Okay, but for me, across my work is 15 and a half, and times 2 of that is 31. So you want to do 31 minus 24. Okay, so 31 minus 24 all over. You now minus it, so you have 11 here, minus 4, 7. So you have a total of 7. Okay, so this is the amount of inches we need to decrease from our work to give us a total of around 34 for our waist measurements. Okay, so you want to place your tape depending on what the measurement is. You place your tape across your work like so. Yours might be 6 or 5 or 8 depending on the difference between your work and your waist measurement. So you place your tape flat like so on your work, just like I'm doing, and then mine is 7, so this is the 7-inch mark. So you count how many stitches fall in between the 7-inch mark, and that is the amount of stitches we are going to decrease. Okay, so 7. Okay, this is the first stitch now. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25. So I have a total of 25 stitches falling into the 7-inch mark. So you go ahead and count yours and know how many stitches fall into that. So you want to note that measurement as well. So a total of 25 stitches for my 7-inch mark. So these 25 stitches now we are going to be dividing it by 2. Okay, 25 divided by 2, I would have something around 12.5. So I'm just going to round this up to 13, or you can round it down to 12, whichever method you prefer. So you go ahead, do yours and divide the stitch by 2. So I'll be using 13. Okay, so I'm going to use my stitch markers now and place around my work. Okay, I'll be placing 13 stitch markers around my work. What this means is that we are going to be decreasing on those places where we place stitch markers, and we'll be decreasing 2 to give us a total of the initial measurement we have, because we already divided it by 2. So when you place your stitch marker with this now, when you do times 2 of this, it's going to give me 26. Okay, so it's still within the same range. So you just take your stitch markers and mark at your work. Okay, a total of that amount that you got after the division. Okay, so mine is 13. I'm going to be placing a total of 13 stitch markers across my work. So yours is might be different, it might not be 13. Okay, so you see how I'm placing my stitch markers. Okay, you just place them, just separate them a little bit from each other. Okay, and make sure that you have a total of that amount of stitches all across your work. So I'll just go ahead and keep placing my stitch markers. So you go ahead and do yours and place the total number of stitch markers you need to, the total number of stitches you need to reduce. That is the total number of stitch markers you're going to have, just like as I have here. So I'm going to do a total number of 13 stitch markers, and then I'll come back and we'll start doing the decrease. So I've placed a total of 13 stitch markers all the way across my work, like I said I would. So after you've placed your stitch markers around your work, we are going to start making the next row for our decrease. Okay, so this is the direction I'll be starting with all the way around. So depending on the direction for your next row, remember you chain 1 and turn your work, which I've already done, and then you start making your very first stitch, which is 2 half double crochets stacked together, just like we normally do. Into the next stitch you make a half double crochet. Into the next stitch now you make a half double crochet. And at this point now, I'm at the point where I have my stitch marker. So you want to take that off, and we are going to be decreasing twice at each point where we have our stitch marker. So for this point now, I take that stitch marker off, and I'm going to be making these 2 next stitches into one. And how do I do that? You make a half double crochet. So yarn over, you pick on the front loop of this stitch and then on the back loop of the next stitch. So you'll be making the 2 of them into one half double crochet. So into this first stitch you pick the front loop, into the next stitch you pick the back loop, and then you make your half double crochet. Okay, so we have decreased those 2 stitches as one, and like I said, we'll be making 2 decreases at a point. So we are going to do that again. Yarn over into the next stitch now. So these are the 2 stitches we decreased. So this is the top of our next stitch. You pick the front loop of that stitch and then the back loop of the next stitch. Okay, and you make a half double crochet on the 2 of them. So at this point now we have made 2 decreases. Okay, that means we made 4, these 4, 1 2 3 4 half double crochets, we made them into 2. Okay, so you now continue making your stitches as normal until you get to the point where you have your stitch marker again. So into my very next stitch now, I'll make a half double crochet. Into the next stitch I'll make a half double crochet. Into the next stitch, half double crochet, just all the way like that until you get to the point where you have your stitch marker again, and we'll make the same decrease that we just did. Okay, so I'm at this point now where I have my stitch marker again. So you just take that off. Once you take off the stitch marker, you'll be decreasing the next 2 stitches into one. So you pick the top of the first stitch, which is the front loop, and then the back loop of the next stitch, and make a half double crochet there. Yarn over into the next stitch, you pick the front loop and then the back loop of the following stitch there, and make a half double crochet. So just like we did here, that's the same thing we just did here now. And then you just continue making your stitches as usual. You make half double crochet into each of the next stitches without making any decrease until you get to the point where you have your stitch marker again, and you repeat the process. So that is what you have to do at all the points where you have your stitch marker. You're going to be making 2 decreases at each point all the way until you get to the end of the row. So at this point now, I'm done making all my decreases. You can see I don't have any more stitch markers left, and I'm towards the end of that row. So once you place your very last half double crochet into the very last stitch, you're going to slip stitch to the top of the very first half double crochet that we have there. Okay, so once you've connected around, you chain one, turn your work, and into the very first stitch you make your starting stitch, 2 single crochet stacked on each other. Into the next stitch you make a half double crochet, into the next stitch you make a half double crochet, and you just place half double crochet on all of the stitches all the way around until you get to the end of the row. So for this row we are not making any decreases again. So you can see, if you at this point you should notice that your work have already decreased and it shrunk a bit at this point. So we are just going to place that half double crochet all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. So at this point I'm towards the end of the row, so placing my very last stitch, and then I'm just going to slip stitch to join. So the next thing after this now, so you chain one, the next thing after this now is to make our mesh part, and this is what you should have at this point. So you can see it has already shown that reduction. You can see here is much smaller than here. Okay, so that reduction is already there. I just want to start making the mesh part, and to make the mesh part, after you chain one, you want to turn your work, okay, into the very first stitch there. You make your very first starting half double crochet stitch. Okay, after your first half double crochet stitch, you chain one, and then you skip the next stitch, and into the third stitch you make a half double crochet there. So we'll be skipping one stitch is separated by chain one for the mesh pattern. So you chain one again, yarn over, skip this stitch and walk into the next stitch, make a half double crochet there. Okay, you chain one again, skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch you make a half double crochet. And that is just the pattern to repeat all the way around until you get to the end of the row. So I just discovered right now that the first footage I made on showing you how to finish the first row of mesh, I can't find it anymore, so I decided to make a swatch and show you how to finish that first row of mesh. So please pardon me, because I'm already done with the tutorial, and this is just an amendment for the parts that is missing. So I already made it in a circular motion, just like the way our top is going. So once you're done, okay, with that first row of mesh, I'm towards the end of the row for the mesh. Okay, so remember is chain half double crochet, chain one, half double crochet, chain one. Okay, so yarn over, I'm towards the end of the stitch, you skip the first, you skip stitch and place into the next stitch, which is what we've been doing. Okay, so at this point now I have one more stitch left to do. So if yours fall onto the very last stitch, all you have to do is just to slip stitch and join the row. But if you have one more stitch left, all you have to do is chain one again, and then you don't have to skip any stitch because it's just one stitch left. You then place a half double crochet into that very last stitch. Okay, and then you're going to slip stitch to the top of the very first half double crochet that we have there. Okay, and that is how to complete the row. So you should have 2 or half double crochets at the end of your row, one for the beginning and one for the ending, without a chain one space in between. Okay, so once you've done that, you chain one, turn your work, and then to start the second row for the mesh, all you have to do is, this is the top of the very first double crochet that we have here. So you're going to place, okay, so this is the top of, this is that first double crochet, this is the chain one space. So you place your starting double crochet into the top of that first half double crochet there. Okay, so which is 2 single crochets stacked on each other. After that, into the very first stitch, you chain one, yarn over, you're going to skip the chain one space and walk into the top of the next half double crochet stitch. Okay, you chain one, yarn over, walk into the top of the next half double crochet stitch, chain one, and then walk into the top of the next half double crochet stitch. So you're not walking into the chain one spaces, we are only walking on top of the half double crochet stitches from the previous row. This is what the second row of mesh should look like. So you just go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way around until you're towards the end of the row, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so this is the only part of the footage that is missing, so just go ahead and repeat this process, and the next footage is just following the tutorial as normal. So at this point I'm towards the end of that row. Okay, you can see my last half double crochet here, and chain one space, and then the next half double crochet. Okay, so chain one, and then into the top of that half double crochet you place a half double crochet there, and then you're going to slip stitch to the top of the next half double crochet, which was our starting stitch. So like I said, we'll be having a total of 2 double crochets together at the end of each row without a chain one in between. Okay, so we are just going to repeat this row 2, this second row of mesh again. So you chain one, turn your work, okay, into the top of this very first half double crochet that we have here. That is where you want to place your half double crochet stitch, okay, which is the starting stitch. Then chain one, and then into the very next stitch now you're going to place your half double crochet into the top of the next half double crochet there. You chain one and place your next half double crochet on the top of the next half double crochet. Okay, chain 1 and place your half double crochet on the top of the next half double crochet. So you can see how my double crochets are kind of aligned on top of each other, not in the chain 1 spaces. That is what you want to have. So you go ahead and keep repeating this all the way until the end of the row. You remember to place your last half double crochet on this very last stitch and then slip stitch to join, and that is the pattern to repeat row after row until we have it a total of about 10 inches. Okay, when we measure our work. So this is what I have right now. So the total measurements for this mesh part and the other parts of the work is around 7.5. Okay, so I want to keep doing this until I have a total of 10 inches when I measure my work. Okay, so go ahead and keep repeating the mesh pattern row after row until you have it about 10 inches. Okay, so at this point now I have my work about the length I want it to be, which is around 10 inches like I explained. So you want to take your tape and measure it across like this from top to bottom. Okay, so you can see mine is around 10 inches from the top to the bottom. So once you have that, now the next thing we are going to do is to make a border, and we are going to be placing single crochet stitches on all of the stitches. So after you've chained one, you turn your work, okay, and into the very first stitch there, which are first a half double crochet, you're going to place a single crochet there. Into the next stitch, which is the chain space, you place one single crochet there. Into the next stitch, which is the half double crochet, you place a single crochet on top of it. The next stitch is the chain space in between, you're going to place a single crochet there, next stitch, half double crochet stitch, you place a single crochet on it. So we are basically just making single crochet on all of the stitches all the way across. So you're placing single crochet on the chain spaces and on top of the half double crochets from the previous row. So just go ahead and repeat this all the way around, and I'll meet you when we are done. So once you're done placing single crochet on all of the stitches all the way around, you now want to slip stitch to the top of the first single crochet that we have. Okay, chain 1, pull up a loop, and then we are going to cut off our yarn because we are done with this part of the work. Okay, so this is what you should have. You should have something like this. Okay, so this is what I have at this point. And once you're done with this part of the work, we are going to turn our work, and then we are going to start making the v-neck, okay, the shoulder area, and then the sleeve as well. So to get started, you want to count the number of stitches you have all the way around. Okay, go ahead and count each of your stitches all the way, starting from the very first stitch here. Okay, and then count all the way around and note how many number of stitches you have. Okay, so once you're done counting your stitches and you know how many stitches you have, the next thing is for us, this part where is the seam that we've been joining, we want to fold it to be on the side of our work. Okay, so you make it to be on the side of your work, okay, and flatten it, like arrange your work so that that seam is on the side like this. So this is what you should have. Okay, so once you figure that out, now you want to place a stitch marker in between two stitches. Okay, not on top of a stitch. The stitch marker is going in between two stitches. This is what I mean. This is a top of a stitch and this is a top of a stitch. Instead of on top, you're putting your stitch marker in between, like so. Okay, so that is where I am going to attach my stitch marker, and I'm attaching it right in between two stitches where we have this seam for the joining. Okay, so you mark that stitch which is in between two stitches, and then you count all the way from here to here and make sure that it is the half measurement of the total number of stitches you have. Okay, so if you have like 100 stitches from here where you marked, you're going to count 50 and then mark in between the stitch at this point again. So we are essentially just marking this end and marking this end, but we want to also make sure that we have the same number of stitches on this side and on this side of the work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and count mine and then place my stitch marker. So I've divided my stitches, I've marked out this point of the work as well. So this is the half point for my work. Okay, so this is now going to be your front and the back of your work. So we are going to start making the V portion of the neck. Okay, so see the stitch marker at the side as well. So once we've done that, now I want to divide this front part from here, now from this side all the way to this side. You also divide it by 2, and then you also divide the back part as well by 2. Okay, so you count from here all the way to the middle point, and then you place your stitch marker there. So you should have the same number of stitches here and here. So I've gone ahead to divide this front part by 2 and also divided the back part by 2. Okay, so you should have a total of 4 stitch markers at this point on your work, which means you've divided your work into 4 equal parts. Okay, one at the side, one at the side, one in the front, and one at the back. So once we have this, now we are going to mark out the space for the armhole. Okay, so you essentially want to just take your tape, place it from this part of your work. Okay, and then you're going to trace the 1 inch mark. Okay, so this is my 1 inch mark, very right on top of this stitch. So I'm going to place a stitch marker there. Okay, you place a stitch marker on that 1 inch mark. Okay, so that means for our work, this is the next stitch is where we are going to be attaching our yarn. So you count how many stitches from here to where you have your stitch marker. So you also count the stitches on top, because for this part you're not putting the stitch marker in between, you're putting it on top of a stitch. So you count that stitch, the stitch marker is on top. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we have a total of 4 stitches. So from this side too, you should count a total of 4 stitches as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is the 4th stitch, and then you're going to also place a stitch marker on the top of that 4th stitch. Okay, so you measure yours and know how many stitches you need to mark out. So this is it for the armhole. Okay, so we are going to now attach our yarn and start making the rope. So since this is the part where our decrease is going to be, this is going to be the neck area, and then we'll make our decreases on the both side. So you want to take your yarn. At this point I'll be using the yellow yarn. Okay, and then you're going to attach it into the very first stitch here. Okay, that is where you want to attach your yarn. So once you've attached your yarn, now the next thing you want to do is to chain 1. Okay, you can take off the stitch marker, chain 1, and then you're going to make a single crochet into that same stitch where we attached our yarn. So you make a single crochet, and then you're going to make another single crochet on top of that initial single crochet to give us the height for a double crochet. Okay, so once you have this, now you want to yarn over into the very next stitch. You're going to make a half double crochet stitch there. Yarn over into the next stitch, you make a half double crochet stitch. Into the next stitch, you make a half double crochet, and you're just essentially just placing half double crochet stitches all the way until you get to this point. Okay, this very last stitch before this stitch marker here. Okay, so just go ahead and place half double crochet on all of the stitches until the very last stitch here before the stitch marker. Okay, so once you've placed your very last half double crochet into the very last stitch here, like I said, is the stitch before the one where that have the stitch marker, you want to chain 1, turn your work, and then you make a starting half double crochet stitch on top of the first stitch there, which is 2 single crochets stacked on top of each other. So once you have this, now you want to chain 1, skip 1 stitch and work into the next stitch. You chain 1, skip 1 stitch and work into the next stitch. So we are going to be making mesh pattern for this part. So we are going to keep doing this until we get to the end of the row. When we get to the end of the row, I'll show you how to make the decrease for the neck, the v-neck. Okay, so just keep repeating the chain 1, skip 1 and work into the next stitch until you get to the end of the row. Okay, so I'm towards the end of the row and I have about 4 stitches left. So I've chained 1, you skip 1 and work into the next stitch. So now I have 2 stitches left. Okay, remember how we made decreases for the down part of the work. You're going to work these 2 stitches as one, and you're not going to be placing any chain 1 space in between because there is no stitch to skip. If you have 3 stitches left, you have to make your chain 1, you skip 1 stitch and then decrease the last 2 stitches. But since I have only 2 left, I'm not going to make any chain 1 space. I'm just going to decrease these last 2 stitches into 1. So yarn over, pick the front loop of the first stitch and then pick the back loop of the other stitch and then make them as 1 half double crochet. So at the end of your row you should have 2 half double crochet like so. Okay, without a chain 1 space in between. Okay, after that you chain 1, turn your work, and we are also going to make decrease at this point. Again, how are we going to make decrease? Instead of working right on top of our very first stitch, okay, we are going to work onto the second stitch. Okay, and this is the top of, okay, so this is our first stitch and this is the top of our second stitch, and that is where we are going to be working. So you're skipping the top of your first stitch. Okay, so once you've made your first starting half double crochet stitch, you chain 1 again, yarn over, and then you work into the top of your next stitch. Okay, not the chain 1 space, just like we did for the other mesh part. You chain 1 again and then you work into the top of the other half double crochet from the previous row, chain 1, and then work into the top of the half double crochet from the other row. So this is just a pattern to repeat all the way until you get to the end of the row. Okay, and I'll show you how to finish this end as well. So I'm towards the end of that row. Okay, I'm just placing half double crochet on the next stitch. Remember, chain 1, and then we have our very last stitch, and you can see the chain 1 space in between, and this is the top of the last stitch. So you're going to place a half double crochet on the top of that very last stitch. So this is what you should have for this row. You can see how the half double crochets are kind of on top of the previous half double crochets. That is what you want to have. So after that you chain 1, turn your work, and then you're going to make a half double crochet right on top of this half double crochet that we have here, not into the chain 1 space. Okay, so you make your first single crochet, stack another single crochet on it to give you the height you need. You chain one, which is representing this chain one, and then into the next stitch, which is a half double crochet stitch, you make a half double crochet, chain one into the next, skip the chain and make a half double crochet on top of the other half double crochet. And you want to repeat this until you are towards the end of your row, and I'm going to show you how to make decrease for this part of your work. So go ahead and repeat the pattern all the way until you get towards the end. So at this point now, I'm towards the end of the row. You can see my half double crochet, chain one, half double crochet. Okay, so what do you want to do? You want to chain one. Okay, you make your half double crochet into the half double crochet stitch that you have. Okay, once you have that, now you're going to be left with chain one, half double crochet. To make the decrease for this row, you're not going to make any chain in between this. You're just going to yarn over, you skip the chain one and then work into the last half double crochet stitch that you have there. Okay, so at the end you should have 2 half double crochet together without a chain one space. Okay, so that is what you should have at the end of this row. So you chain one, and then just like we did for row 2 for this mesh part, all you have to do, you're going to skip the first stitch and then work into the second stitch. Okay, so this is my second stitch. That is where you want to make your very first half double crochet stitch, which is 2 single crochet stacked on each other. Yarn, you chain one, which is this chain one, onto the next half double crochet stitch, you may place a half double crochet, chain one, into the next half double crochet stitch, you place a half double crochet. So this is how to make decreases for your pattern. So you go ahead and repeat the process all the way to this end of your work. At this point we are not making any decrease, we're only decreasing only on one side. So you go ahead and make that, you turn back all the way. When you get towards the end of this row, you remember how we made decrease for the previous row. That is how you should make your decrease, and then you turn your work, you skip one, work into the second, and keep going like that all the way until you should have your work about right now. Okay, so to get the right measurement, because this is a mesh stitch, you want to stretch it like this, and then you take the measurements. Okay, you take the measurements immediately after you stretch it, because this is a mesh work, so it kind of shrinks a lot. So you take your measurement like so. So I have about 6.5. I want to keep doing this decrease until I have around only 4 inches left. Okay, when I measure across. So just go ahead and keep making your decrease. Remember, I said only on one side of your work you should be making the decrease all the way until you have only about 4 inches left at the top of your work. So at this point now, this is what my work looks like. You can see the side where we'll be making the decrease, and this side there was no decrease. Okay, so at this point I have it that 4 inch that I want it to be. So remember, like I said, you stretch out your work, okay, and then you place your tape across and measure. So you can see mine is around that 4 inch. So once you have that now at the top, we are now going to stop making our decreases. So at this point you also measure the total length of this yellow part. So from here now to the bottom part, you can see it's almost 5, and this opening now is going to be the opening of the armhole. So this is 5. We want to increase this all the way until we have about 7 inches. Okay, so about 7 inches. So I'm going to keep making this mesh part without making any decrease on this side again, okay, until I have about 7 inch mark in length. And one thing again you should notice, that you should end on this side without the side where you don't have the decrease. That is the part you want to stop making your decrease. So from the second row now all the way up, now don't end. You can see the way I'm stopping on this side. Don't stop on this side, stop on this side, and then you stop making your decreases. If your work is at the end, at this end, you want to make that last decrease for this row, okay, and work your way to this point before you start working back and forth again for the remaining of the row. So for the total length, it is going to be different for different sizes. So the total length is going to be different depending on the sizes. So why mine is 7 is because I'm a size medium, so I'm using 7. Okay, size medium and large can use 7. Okay, for a smaller size like a size small, you have to use 6, a total length of 6. Okay, for an extra large you have to use a total length of 8. So I'll be displaying the different variations on the screen, so pick your measurements and know the measurement. So at this point, if you measure the length of your work and it's already the length that you need it to be, you're going to stop here. But if it is not yet the length that you want it to be, you want to keep making rows of no decrease at this point again until you have it the length that you want it to be, which is for me is around 7 inches. So we're just going to keep making back and forth rows. Okay, so you turn your work and then into the very first stitch. Remember, I said we are not making any decreases again. So into the very first stitch, you make your very first half double crochet, which is 2 single crochet stacked on each other. After that, you want to chain 1 and then skip the chain and work into the top of the half double crochet from the other side. You chain 1, work into the next half double crochet. Just basically what we've been doing. The only difference is when you get to the end of this row, okay, at this point now, you're not going to make any decrease, you're not skipping any chain. You just place your last half double crochet here, you chain 1 and place the remaining half double crochet here, okay, and then you turn your work and then continue just like the way we started here. You're not skipping any stitch anymore. Okay, so you just go ahead and do that back and forth until you have it the required length that it should be for your size. So at this point now I have it the total length I want it to be. So you want to, you know, stretch it like I always advise you, stretch it and then you flatten it, and then you're going to take your tape and measure from the top to the bottom. Okay, just like this. So you can see it is around that 7 inch that I need it for my size. So you're going to make the length depending on what your size is. So once you've achieved that, the next thing for us to do, you chain one, you turn your work, and then we'll place single crochets on all of the stitches, including the chain spaces. Okay, so into the very first half double crochet you make your single crochet stitch. Into the chain space in between you make a single crochet stitch. Into the next half double crochet you place a single crochet. The chain space in between you place a single crochet, and this is just a pattern you want to repeat all the way until you get to the end of the row. So I'm at the end of the row. I've placed single crochet stitches on all of the stitches and chain spaces. So you just chain one, pull up a loop, and then cut off the yarn, because we are done with this part of the work. Okay, so this is what I have. So this is what our work is looking like. We attached our yarn here, and then we worked all the way, made the decreases, and then stopped making decreases, and then until we have it the length that we want it to be. So after you've achieved this, now we want to replicate the same thing on this side. The only difference is that our decrease, just like it is on this side, it is going to be on this side to give us that v-neck that we are looking for. So how are we going to achieve this? We attached our yarn here, so the next yarn now we're going to attach is right into this same stitch space here, okay, onto the top of the very next stitch there. So you want to turn your work like so. Okay, so this is going to be on this side, and then you're going to start working on this side. Okay, and remember this stitch marker here, we are going to stop on the stitch before the stitch marker. Okay, so you want to take your yarn and attach it just like we did for this side. You attach it on the top of the very first stitch there. Okay, so once you have attached your yarn, you want to make a starting half double crochet stitch, which is 2 single crochets stacked on each other, and you're doing it into the same stitch where you attached your yarn. Okay, so once you have that, now into the next stitch you make a half double crochet. Into the next stitch you make a half double crochet. Okay, so like I said, this is just the same thing that we did here. That is the exact same thing that we are doing on this side of our work. So you go ahead and replicate this process on this side of your work as well. So you make this first row, and then you start making your decreases, and remember the decrease is going to be on this side of our work. So you make the decreases for this part, and then you count the number of rows and note the rows you stopped making your decrease. So that is the row you're going to stop making your decrease on this point as well, and then you start making the rows without decreasing. Okay, you make the same number of rows. So you should have the total number of rows you have here. That's the same number of rows you should have here. Once you're done making the whole of this, the exact copy of what you have here, okay, we are going to replicate the process we did on the front, on the back side. Remember, this is our center stitches. Remember to mark the 1 inch mark for the armhole. Okay, you also mark the 1 inch mark for the armhole. You can rewind the video and, you know, start exactly on how we made these parts for the front. You also repeat the same process on the back. You do the same decreases for the v-neck. Okay, remember this center stitch where we marked for the back side of the work. You attach your yarn here, you make your decrease on this side and work all the way up, and then you do the same thing, attach your yarn here and work all the way up. So the same exact thing we did there, you're just going to do it 3 more times. Okay, the only thing you should note is where the side your decrease is going to be, which is on the center part of your work, just like as this one is on this side. This second panel is going to be on this side. You attach your yarn again, this one is going to be on this side, and this one is going to be on this side. So you should have a total of 4 like this. So go ahead and do all that, and I'll meet you when we are done with that. Okay, so at this point now I'm done making the 4 panels like I said. Okay, so once you're done making this, you can see the v-neck is already there, and then we are going to connect this part to this part. Okay, to connect it, so this is going to be for the shoulder, and then we'll also connect these other 2 parts as well. Okay, so you can also see those 1 inch mark that we left here for the armpit. Okay, for the armhole area, you can see that on this side as well. So yeah, once you're at this point now, the next thing we'll do is to connect our work together. And to do that, you want to take your yarn and hook, and then at this point you want to make sure that you've chosen a right side and a wrong side. So for me, the right side of my work is what is inside, and then the wrong side of my work is what is currently out, like so. So I'm just going to be joining on the wrong side facing me. Okay, so to start joining, you want to attach these 2 together. So you hold the 2 top like so. Okay, you can start from any point. You just insert your hook from the top of the first stitch here, and then the top of the other stitch on this side as well, and then you're just going to attach your yarn there. Okay, so you attach your yarn, and once you've attached your yarn, we are going to use slip stitch to join these stitches together. So after you've done that, into that same very stitch space, you want to insert your hook there, yarn over, and then pull through. Okay, so that is how to make a slip stitch. You pick the top of the next stitch. So you pick the top of this next stitch, and I would advise you to pick the front loop, and then on this other stitch you're going to pick this loop that is also close to you, which is the front loop as well, and then you slip stitch both of them together. Okay, you move on to the next stitch, you pick the top of that loop, and then you pick the top of the corresponding stitch behind, and then just slip stitch to join. Okay, so that is just what you want to repeat all the way until you get to the end of the row and you fasten off. So I've already made the slip stitch all the way to this end, and when you get to the very last stitch, you pick the both loops on both sides, okay, and then slip stitch to join that part as well. So you chain one, pull up a loop, and then cut off the yarn. So as you can see, we have joined this part. So this is going to be the wrong side of your work, and this would be the right side of your work. Okay, so just go ahead and repeat the same process on this side again, and then we'll come back to work on the neck border. Okay, so when you're done with the joining for the both sides, we are now going to turn our work inside out, okay, by bringing the right side of our work outside. Okay, so once you have turned it inside out, we are going to start making the neck border, and we're switching to the purple yarn as well. So to get started, you want to come to the center of the two neck sides like so. So this first row here, this part connecting the first row and the second row, you want to insert your hook through the stitch there, and then also insert your hook through the top of the stitch of the first row connecting this first row and the second row here. So through the corner of that stitch as well, you also put your hook through. So you should have the two stitches now on your hook, and that is where you want to attach your yarn. Okay, so once you've attached your yarn, it's like as if those two rows are now connected, and then into this one of the stitches that you used in connecting, which is the one on this side, you insert your hook through it and then make a chain one there. Okay, so once you've chained one, we are going to be placing a single crochet into that same very stitch. So into that same stitch where we made our chain one, that is where you'll be placing your single crochet. Okay, then on this half double crochet that is on this side, you place 2 single crochet into it. So 1 and then 2. So you place 2 single crochet into that stitch there. Okay, and then you move on to the next row. So this is the next row. We are going to be placing 2 single crochet onto that next row as well. If you notice, I'm carrying my yarn along with me to hide it so that I don't have a lot of tails to weave in later. Okay, so now we are at the next row. You put 2 single crochet through those stitches. So you are picking in between the stitches, and you're just placing 2 single crochet on every stitch for every row. Okay, so that is that. You move on to the next row, and you also place 2 single crochet there, and that is just the pattern to repeat for this neck part of our work. Okay, so this is what you have. So you should go ahead and repeat that all the way when you get to this place. Okay, so I've made the single crochet all the way. I'm at that part where we joined. So I just remembered that at this part we made single crochet on the top of this place, and we made single crochet here, and it was those 2 single crochet stitches that we attached together. So on the first single crochet row, you place 1 single crochet by the side of that stitch there, and then you move on to the next single crochet row on this side and also place a single crochet stitch there. Okay, and you're done for that part. So now we're at the part where we have the half double crochet row, where you'll be placing 2 single crochets for each half double crochet row. So into the next stitch now, 2 single crochets, and just what we've been doing previously all the way until we get to that center V part. Okay, and I'll show you how to connect these two together. So at this point now, I've made it all the way around, and I'm towards that V joint, that V center for the other part, and I've placed the 2 single crochet for this row. So for the last row, just like we did for the front part, you connect this one. So you pick the connecting stitch for the 2 rows, the top of that stitch, and then you move to the top of the connecting stitch for these other 2 rows on this side, and then you slip stitch them together. Okay, once you've slip stitched them together, you're just going to go ahead and place a single crochet into the same very stitch, okay, where you did your slip stitch on this other side. So once you've made that single crochet, you then move on to the next half double crochet row and place 2 single crochets there. So this is just a repetition of what we did when we started the rows. So you just keep placing 2 single crochets on every row, and when you get to this point, remember to pick the 1 single crochet for the single crochet row on this side, and then continue your way all the way back down until where we started. Okay, so at this point now, I'm done placing the single crochet all the way around, and I'm right back at that point where we started. Okay, so once you get to this point now, you want to slip stitch to join to the top of the very first single crochet that we have there. Okay, so once you slip stitch and join, you chain 1 and then move on into the next stitch, not the stitch where you slip stitch to join. Into the next stitch, you place a single crochet there. Into the next stitch, you place a single crochet. Into the next stitch you place a single crochet, and we are just going to place single crochet on all of the stitches all the way until we get to this middle point again, and I will show you how to navigate this part. So go ahead and work your way back to this point. Okay, so at this point I'm towards that center, okay, and if you look closely, okay, you will notice that there is something like a center stitch at that point connecting the two rows together. You notice like a center stitch there. That center stitch, you want to insert a stitch marker there. Okay, the reason for this is because we are not going to work into that stitch, so insert a stitch marker into that center stitch to mark it, and then you just continue making your single crochets on the stitches. So into this stitch here I place a single crochet. Okay, the next stitch here and I place a single crochet, and now I'm at that stitch where I have my stitch marker. You're going to skip that stitch and work into the next stitch there. Okay, place a single crochet. Into the next stitch you place a single crochet, and that is just it. So you can go ahead and take off the stitch marker at this point, and then you just keep placing single crochet on all of the stitches until we are right back at this point where we started, and I will show you how to complete the round. So when you've worked your way all the way back to that center part where we started, you want to carefully look for that very first slip stitch here, okay, before the next row. So this is it for me here. So if you look closely you can see this is a single crochet here, and then this is the chain one, and then this is the slip stitch before we started this chain one single crochet. Okay, so I'm just going to place the remaining single crochets here, and then I'm going to slip stitch to that slip stitch that we previously had there. So single crochet, and then when you get to the point of that slip stitch you're going to make a slip stitch there. Okay, once you have slip stitch you chain one, pull up a loop, and then cut off. And that is all for this center part. So you can see what the work is looking like at this point. So you can see our v-neck is already there. Okay, so once we are done with this, now we are going to start making the border for the armhole as well. So still on the front side of your work you want to take the center part of the armhole, okay, which is when you place your work flat like this. Now this center part, this is where we are going to be attaching our yarn. So you just attach your yarn right back to this center. Okay, so once you've attached your yarn you want to chain one, and then into the top of this next stitch, that is where you want to place a single crochet there. Into the next stitch you place a single crochet. Into the next stitch you place a single crochet all the way until you get to the base of this stitch here. Now you can see this is our half double crochet for this row, and this is the base of the stitch. So at the base of that stitch you place a single crochet there, and then this half double crochet that we have here, just like we did for the neck border, you'll be placing 2 single crochets for the half double crochet. Okay, so you move on to the next row, and then you place 2 single crochets as well. Move on to the next row, 2 single crochets. So this is just basically like what we did for the neck border. Okay, so you just go ahead and repeat the process all the way around until we are right back at this point where we started again. Okay, so when you get to this point, remember to pick the base of this stitch and then put single crochet on top of all of these stitches until we are right back at this point where we started. Alright, so I've worked my way through all the way back, and I'm at that point where we started. So remember that place where we attached our yarn? I'm going to be placing a single crochet into that stitch space as well. Okay, so when you've made that single crochet, you're going to slip stitch to the top of this first single crochet that we have here to connect that round. So after you've done that, now the next thing is to chain one, and then into the very next stitch, that is where you want to place your next single crochet, and then you want to place the stitch marker to the top of this single crochet here to mark that stitch. Okay, and then we are just going to basically just place single crochet on top of the following stitches all the way until we get right to this point where we started again. Okay, so just go ahead and place single crochet on all of the stitches, and I'll meet you towards the end of this row. So at this point I'm towards the end of that row. So like I said, you're just placing single crochet on all of the stitches all the way to this point. Okay, and okay, so this is my very last stitch before the first stitch here. So you also place a single crochet there, and then you're going to remove the stitch marker and then slip stitch to the top of that stitch where you just remove the stitch marker from. Okay, then chain one, pull up a loop, and cut off the excess yarn. So this is what it should look like when you're done. Okay, so you can see. So we'll go ahead and repeat the same process on this side again, and I'll meet you when we are done with that. Okay, so at this point I'm done making the second part of the sleeves. Okay, so this is what the two of them looks like, and I've gone ahead to attach some of the skulls that I'll be needing, so I attach them diagonally. So this is the third one, so I'll be placing it here. So you want to go ahead and determine how you want to place your skulls and how many skulls you want, but I just did mine diagonally, and I kind of, instead of placing them like this, I also tilted the skulls so that they are all in a diagonal way. So once you have your skull the way you want it to be, the next thing you want to do is to take some pin. Okay, I'll be using some pin to pin them together. You can use anything you can find to hold it onto the fabric, okay? Or if you don't have this and you have a better way of navigating it, that's totally fine. But what I'll just do is to use the pin to secure my applique, my skull applique, onto the work like so. Okay, the position I want to sew it. And then we are not picking the back side of the outfit, we're only working with this front part of our outfit. Okay, so when you're sewing, you want to be careful not to pick the back side so as not to join the two of them together. So we're only working on the front like this. So once you've attached your pin the way you want your applique to be, you want to go ahead and take a normal sewing needle. You can also use a tapestry needle, but this is, a yarn needle, but this is the one I prefer because it's much easier to work with for this kind of work. So you're just going to sew it how you normally sew a cloth, but I don't really know how I'm going to explain that, so I just hope you watch me and see how I do it, and then you can figure out how to do yours as well. Okay, so I'm going to start threading from inside of my work, okay, and try to come out here. So I'm not going to pull everything through, and then I'm going to put the needle back through that same place just to secure my yarn. Okay, so once you've secured your yarn, you want to pass your needle back out, but this time around you want to pass it to come out on top of the stitches. So still from under, because our yarn is still inside, so from inside you pass your needle back to the front part of the work like this, okay, on top of one of the stitches. And once you have that, now you're now going to use it to sew all the way around. So you pick on top of the next stitch, okay, try to also pick the stitches from the top fabric so that you can secure the skull to it, and then come out maybe 2 or 3 stitches down. Okay, so basically how you would normally sew an outfit, just the only difference is that we are sewing an applique instead. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat this process all the way around until I get to this part where I have a curved bent. So as you sew, you try to arrange your applique at the same time, okay, so that you don't end up with something crooked when you're done with the sewing, and your stitches should not be so tight as well. Okay, so now you can see I'm at that point where I have that joint at that corner there, so I'll put my needle out through. So at this point now, what do? I want to put my needle through the base of that joining like this, and then come out right back to where my needle was before. Okay, and then for this point you want to pull tightly. This is to make sure that that curve stays in place. Okay, and then you just keep sewing like you have been doing normally. Okay, so like I say, as you sew, you try to arrange your applique at the same time. So be careful for this pin so that you don't end up injuring yourself. So that's very, very important. Try to be as careful as you can. So at this point now, I don't need this pin anymore because I'm done sewing where that pin was holding, so you can as well just take that off to be on the safer side. You can see all this part of the applique is already attached, so I'm just going to keep sewing all the way around until I'm right back to the point where I started sewing. Also remember this joining here. Okay, let's do that real quick. Okay, because of that joining, you want to come out to the top of the joining like this, and then you put your stitch to the base of that joining and come out again right to where you passed your needle from, and then pull tightly to make sure that that shape stays in place. Not so tight though. Okay, you can see how I'm trying to tug on the stitches to retain the skull shape. Okay, and then you just keep sewing all the way around until right back to this point. So at this point now, I'm right back at where we started. I'm also done with this pin. So this is what I have. I've already attached the skull. So what you want to do next is to pass your needle through the stitches back to the wrong side of your work. Okay, so make sure you pass your needle through to that wrong side, and then we are going to just secure the yarn at the back here. Okay, So you can do this however method you prefer, or you know how to, or you can just follow what I just did. So once you've secured your yarn there, the next thing is to weave it in to hide the tail, and then you cut off. So this is essentially how to attach your skull applique. You can attach it with any method you prefer. You can even use a fabric glue if that is what you have. Okay, so this is the skull applique. So this is the one we just attached. So you go ahead and attach the remaining ones, and then I'll meet you right after we are done with that. Okay, so right now I'm done attaching all the appliques. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and when you're done, the next thing for us to do is to weave in our end. So you want to take your yarn needle, and then all these places where we have tails weaving out, sticking out, you want to weave that in. So you're weaving in on the wrong side of your work, which is the inside part. So this is the front of our work, obviously, and we are weaving in on the inside. So you take your yarn needle, pick a few stitches, okay, on the inside part of your work. So once you're done picking a few of the stitches, you want to put your yarn through the needle, okay, and then you want to pass that through, adjust it, and then cut off the excess. Okay, so like that we have weaved in that part, and then you look for another part. Okay, so for this part now that I have these yellow yarns, I'm going to weave them in. So you want to make sure that you're weaving in the same color of the yarn into the same part of your work. So you're not going to weave in this yellow into the purple part. Okay, you weave the yellow into the yellow part of your work. So you don't repeat the process again. So we have a lot of yarns here, so you take them one step at a time. So you pick a few stitches, and then you pass the yarn through the needle. So I'm just picking just 2 of the yarn, okay, and then pass them through and cut off the excess. So you go ahead and repeat that for these other ones. You weave them in as well. So you go ahead, all the points where you have yarn out of your work, you're going to go ahead and weave all of that in. And that will be all for this tutorial. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment down below. You can also check out my other videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next tutorial. Bye.